Okay, first, this section of the course, I wanted to share with you a pretty famous study. And again, I want to say that having many children myself, I totally understand the use of television, but I just wanted to share this with you. By the age of 3, children from privileged families have heard 30 million more words than children from poor families. By kindergarten, the gap is even greater. So usually in my face-to-face class, when I start this one out, before I even show them the slide, is I ask them, as I say, what has a tendency to make people think that you're smart? And we go on this big discussion. But what it comes down to is a lot of times is our vocabulary. And so when you know that the SAT test is testing your math and your vocabulary, and it's actually been found in the brain that, like, if I use a word that you don't understand, then it kind of creates a state of stress. And a lot of times we attribute people to being very smart if they have a large vocabulary. So this is something interesting. Basically what I'm showing you here is they looked at 13 professional families, 23 working class families, and 6 welfare families. And they found that the recorded vocabulary size, look, this is of the child is 1,116, and this is 525. Average utterances per hour. Okay, the child has 310 here, 168, and the average of different words per hour is 297 to 149. So this was, I'm pretty sure that this graph came from when the children were about 3. But I do believe that I do understand both sides. I've had the privilege to live on both sides, as being very poor early in life and then getting a professional position. So I've had the chance to live on this side of the street and this side of the street. And I can tell you that there is a great difference with the way that the moms on this side of the street interact with the children. But I want everyone to know that in no way, shape, or form am I saying that one is better. I'm just and in fact, I completely understand. When you're very poor and living on very limited funds, life is very hard. When you go to get your medical, you have to sit in there for days and days. If you have no transportation and you have to take the bus, then you have to take hours and hours to do what somebody with a car could do very easily. The stores where you shop, a lot of times, they're inconvenient. Being a single mom is probably the most exhausting thing there is, because not only do you have to do everything on your own, so you're completely exhausted, but you have to deal with this constant guilt that you feel that I'm not giving the child enough, I'm not doing the child enough for the child. I feel so overwhelmed. So I can understand when I show you these studies, I'm going to try to explain why you might see these differences. Whereas in the neighborhood now, when I'm dealing with the women that are more professional, I would say that most of them do not work. And the ones that do work, a lot of them are stay-at-home moms. And the ones that do work, a lot of have nannies and housekeepers and gardeners. And so when you have lots of support and you don't have to do everything on your own, then you tend not to feel so overwhelmed and you tend to have more patience. So we're going to see that, this one, maybe she doesn't read to the child as much because when she lays down in bed to try to read to the child, she's so exhausted that she falls asleep while reading the book. Whereas this one who had the nanny, and she had like 3 hours a day to go and do what she needs to do, and she doesn't have to be worrying about the money every minute, and she has a support network that she has a little bit more energy also to buy books. And then some of you could say, oh, well, they could go to the library, but that takes time and things like that. So here I'm showing you again that it seems like children by the age of 3 from a professional level have a much higher vocabulary. And again, this is going to go on throughout life, and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. If a child walks in at kindergarten and they're already reading and they're already doing these workbooks and they have this huge vocabulary and are throwing around big words like intangible and magnificent, then the teachers kind of are going to think that they're smarter, and their classmates are going to think that they're smarter, and then by them thinking that they're smarter, that feeds into the children thinking that they're smarter, and so they're quicker to not give up, whereas the children who are thinking, oh, I'm not good, then that feeds in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, here again, this is the number of words addressed to children. Again, you can see the professional. And again, I just want to say is it's like when you're so exhausted and you can barely maintain life, then you don't have time to just have a big conversation about, the leaves, the leaf is beautiful, and you want to know why it changes colors? Let's go take some time and look it up on the internet. Whereas somebody who has, less just more support and less financial things to worry about and less things to worry about, they have more time and energy to say, oh yes, let's do this. You see this. Here's another thing though, is professional families, the children here, 32 affirmatives and 5 prohibitions per hour, a ratio of 6 to 1, encouragements to 1 discouragement. So I can do it for you. Here's a professional family. You can do it, 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 you can do it. No. You can do it, 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 you can do it. No. Whereas let's contrast this with the welfare family. What you hear is, you can do it, no, no. You can do it, no, no. You can do it, no, no. So look at all these factors, because even though we're talking about brain science, I think a lot of you are taking this class to kind of figure out, probably using some information from this class. And so I'm just trying to show you how the environment might be able to shape the brain. And again, I don't want anybody to feel like I'm saying that these are better than these and so on and so forth. I'm simply saying of a study that's found these things. And, we kind of wonder why things are the way they are. Was it that born genetic with a big vocabulary, or was it that they were exposed to many more words, or is it a combination of the two? So here I'm going over the numbers on encouragements and discouragements, and basically, the more that you're told, no you can't, no you can't, no you can't, you would see how that would add up, and you would eventually say, no, I can't do it. But if you're constantly hearing, you can, you can, you can, you can, you can, then that would add up. Okay? So the infant is born with 10 billion nerve cells or neurons and spends the first 3 years of life adding billions of glial cells to support and nourish the neurons. So we already talked about that. You had a video about that. You saw that's what it's doing. And then around 10 or 11 years of age, the brain loses about 80% of its neural mass. So around right before you go into puberty, it's like whatever's been used is developed, and what isn't going to use, it's just all going to dissolve the poorly myelinated pathways. What is happening during development is myelination of pathways. We saw that on the video. We went over that. The more pathway is used, the more myelin is added. It is imperative that a child receives developmentally appropriate input from his or her environment in order to nourish each part of the brain's development and promote myelination. So just know that, the first 10 years of life, 11 years of life, then, they need to have lots of stimulation. But I also understand that it's very hard, especially when you're doing it all on your own. It's absolutely exhausting to, just keep up with everything, even if you're married and you have many children, or just even 1 or 2 children. It's the demands that children make a lot of times are very, very exhausting because they need so much. So again, I'm just sharing this information with you, and just do the best that you can, but have this knowledge, understanding what's going on in the brain. Okay, the television in the brain. The television set is on about 7 hours a day in the average American home. I ashamedly say that yes, absolutely, you could put that down in my home, and I am not proud of that. I would say that's a really horrible thing that I do. Again, I wouldn't say that they're watching it 7 hours a day, but it's probably on. They're in the background, then they run around. I have all boys, and I have 5 of them, and so they watch a little bit, and then they run around, and then watch a little bit and run around. But it's, the little 3-year-old I told you is always turning it on. Children of all ages watch an average of 4 hours a day. The average child spends more time watching TV than any other activity except sleeping, and by the age of 18, a child has spent more time in front of a TV than at school. And, we would have to add to, like, the computer and things. Brain size has been shown to decrease 20 to 30% if a child is not touched, played with, or talked to. When young animals were placed in an enclosed area where they could only watch other animals play, their brain growth decreased in proportion to the time spent inactively watching. So I think a lot of you know that we and the PlayStations have really tried to make children more active. The research on the video games is showing that the video games actually can promote some quick thinking. You know, there's been some negativity about exposure to children to violence in video games. That would be a module. Maybe if I get to it this week, I'd love to find some videos, some information. Maybe we'll have that on the discussion board, something there. That would be an interesting topic to explore what the research says. Visual acuity is not fully developed until the age of 4. Whoops, sorry. Okay. No dilation of the pupils, little to no movement of the eyes, lacks normal saccadic movements of the eyes needed for reading, leads to weakening of eye muscles. So, as you know, some children really don't like to read, and they're wondering if that's just because it makes them so tired because their eye muscles are not fully developed. Television and the brain. Rapid change of image does not give the higher thought brain a chance to process the image. So when you think about it, I mean, I watch a lot of, not a lot, but when I'm folding laundry and things, is I'll watch the learning programs, and they are very interesting. I'll give that to you. They're very interesting, and I do try to take away some information from what I'm learning. But a lot of times, even after I watch a whole half-an-hour program, I can only get like maybe recall one or two pieces of significant information. So even when you're putting the children in front of a learning program, unless you quiz them, unless you test them, are they really getting it? Sesame Street and, you know, all the learning programs, they have shown that they do help children a little bit with their number sense and a little bit with their letter recognition, but they're not showing huge advances. So, like, I kind of have a problem with the Noggin television show is a television program, is they advertise it as preschool on TV, but that's like saying learning how the brain works on TV would be the same as in a lab where you have a teacher questioning you, making you write out the answers, you interacting with classmates, telling them what you're learning, so on and so forth. I think that you would agree that yes, you could learn something from watching videos, but I think that you find, even in this class, as you're listening to me, as you're watching the videos, that you don't pick up that much until you actually study and force yourself to try to break down the information and learn it yourselves. Okay. Viewing television represents an endless, purposeless, physically unfulfilling activity for a child. Also, watching television has no built-in endpoint. You know, watching television, you don't just get full on it. Now, they can get bored by sitting there, but unfortunately, the television shows just keep changing, and they keep wanting to watch more. An EEG measurement of brain waves, reading beta waves, watching TV alpha waves. I'm going to see if I can find you some pictures of this. The first 30 years of life, a child learns to walk, to talk, and to think. TV, sit. No conversation, no think. American Pediatric Association advises no television for children under the age of 2. Just as one cautionary note is, again, I told you that something that I feel not so good about is I wish I was one of those moms that could say absolutely no television and, you know, that the children never watch TV. But an interesting thing that I wanted to share with you from my personal stances is, as you know, I have a number of boys, and it was interesting to me that since I have bigger ones to smaller ones, you know, it's hard to tell the bigger ones they can't watch their favorite program when the smaller ones are around. And I actually found that the ones that could focus on the TV from like early before 2 would actually sit there and watch with their bigger brothers. I actually found them to be able to focus well in school. Whereas the ones who had no interest and just wanted to run around and play, they seemed to have a little bit more difficult time focusing in school. That's just an observation that I made from my own life. I don't know if it holds for all children, but I just thought that was interesting that I would share with you. Helping children's developing brains. So you want to minimize television watching. Read lots of books. which, again, I want to say in my house, whenever I try to sit down and read them Harry Potter, is I was able to read my oldest son Harry Potter, and that was a great thing to read those big, thick books to him, and they're very interesting. But I find in my house that now when I try to sit down and read a book to a couple of them, then the other ones want to start fighting and want to start laughing at them and so on and so forth. So I'm just trying to tell you the challenges that I know all of you face, and I don't want you to think that, oh, I'm saying poor parenting or anything like that. I'm just telling you some things to keep in mind that, if you were going to try to do something to encourage brain development, then try this, but life gets in the way and you just do the best that you can. Spend a lot of time in nature, take them out to the woods, let them explore, have children use their hands, feet, and whole body performing purposeful activities. So again, one more final point is that remember, what releases the nerve growth factor and the neurotropins is exercise, movement. And I think a lot of you know that, is just sitting around passively, you just kind of get sluggish, but when you force yourself to move and do things and take action, that's when you truly learn things.